Rest. All right. Well, uh, we'll get into shoot the breeze topic number 4, and it deals with a recent Supreme Court ruling. Yeah, that's right. Are Black people fighting the same fight our ancestors were? Again, are Black people fighting the same fight or fights our ancestors were? And it deals with a recent Supreme Court ruling or a case. It deals. We go to YouTube for the video. How about that? They can explain better than maybe what I can explain. Stand by.
Court has ruled to limit the Voting Rights Act. The case focused on whether states can use race and consider race when redrawing congressional maps. Now, the decision could reduce the influence of minority voters, and questions are growing about what it will mean for the future of voting in America. ABC News legal contributor James Sample and ABC's Devin Dwyer are here to break it all down. James, the court ruled 6-3 here in favor of the voters who challenged adding this second majority Black congressional district. So how did the court reach this decision?
Well, Diane, you're right in the sense that that is what they decided. And they decided this case 6-3. And what they essentially said is that although Louisiana had drawn that second district to comply with the Voting Rights Act under the prior interpretations of the Voting Rights Act that have been in place for more or less 60 years, the Voting Rights Act now effectively requires proof of intentional discrimination, not merely what is known as disparate impact discrimination. And therefore, since there wasn't evidence of that intentional racial discrimination, that second majority minority district violates the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the net effect of which is to take the Voting Rights Act and turn it from a weapon against racial discrimination into a much less significant version of its prior self.
And James, walk us through that part of it. Why does this do so much to disempower the Voting Rights Act?
Well, what the court did here, Diane, and this was an anticipated ruling, to be clear. This has long been in the sights of Chief Justice Roberts, who, as far back as when he was an attorney in the White House counsel's office in the Reagan administration, long before becoming a judge, much less the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the court here today effectively constitutionalizes a color blindness principle almost completely, absent the showing of intention. And what that means is that even the remedies for racial discrimination, the remedies that are designed to prevent racial discrimination, are themselves unconstitutional violations of the 14th and 15th Amendments, the irony being that that is what the Voting Rights Act was passed in order to enforce.
And I want to bring in Devin Dwyer, who covers the Supreme Court. Devin, what sticks out to you from the language of this decision?
Yeah, really not a surprising decision, Diane, given this conservative Supreme Court's decision in history of wanting to roll back the Voting Rights Act, as James was talking about there. But this significantly raises the bar now for challenges to election maps as being discriminatory against minority voters. It's going to make it harder to sue in court. And as the dissent puts it in this case, written by Justice Elena Kagan, in her words, it is a completed demolition of the Voting Rights Act. Kagan goes on to describe, Diane, what she says, the consequences that will be far-reaching and grave, in her words. She says, if other states follow Louisiana's lead, in her view, minority citizens residing in those states will no longer have an equal opportunity to elect candidates of those choice. That's a pretty significant statement coming from the 3 liberal justices in this case who have long insisted that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act needs to remain in place to protect against the types of discrimination that have been present in this country going back generations.
And I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, any reaction from the White House on this yet?
Not yet, but certainly President Trump has been a huge supporter of efforts across the country to try and change and redistrict some of these districts ahead of the midterms to try and give Republicans a boost. And look, this decision means that ultimately you could have less minority representation in Congress and in state houses across the country. I suspect the president will have a positive review of this decision, given his efforts to try and change and try and support redistricting efforts, although that has been to some mixed results, we should say, over the last several months. It also comes, of course, as the president has been eager to put additional restrictions on voting writ large. He, of course, has been calling for this legislation requiring proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote. He's even gone so far as to say he'll somehow act unilaterally if Congress doesn't. And as the president has been taking steps to really undermine confidence in the voting system ahead of the midterms. But certainly he has been very supportive of these redistricting efforts across the country, all intended to give Republicans a boost in the midterms now just a few months away.
Woo! Hey, once again, if you're just tuning in, I am Jacadero filling in for Brother Koku on Shoot the Breeze episode 239 on the Bitter Medicine podcast. Hit that like button. Hit the like button. Why not? We got to get this in the algorithm. This message needs to go out to like-minded individuals like you. Yes, you, the one that's listening, the one that's watching. And we are dealing with Shoot the Breeze topic number 4. Our Black people are fighting the same fights our ancestors were, and with the video and the Supreme Court ruling limiting the Voting Rights Act. We start off with Black Steel. Why not? Black Steel, what say you? Are we fighting the same fights our ancestors were?
Absolutely. I'm reading a book right now. It's by Derek Bell. He was a lawyer who came up with critical race theory. And he talks about the permanence of racism, right? Racism is a permanent feature, right? You can't legislate your way out of it, because whenever you try to legislate your way out of it, right, they'll come up with new and inventive ways. So the Voting Rights Act was actually a response to some of the the things that were done for Black people at the end of Reconstruction. So, at the end of the Civil War, real quick history lesson. At the end of the Civil War, the southern states who had been defeated in the war, they were divided into 5 military districts, right? And there were soldiers placed in each district. Black people were given, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 13th Amendment ended slavery. 14th Amendment made former slave citizens. 15th Amendment gave Black men the right to vote, right? And they had these soldiers in place to protect the rights of former slaves and allowed them to participate in democracy, so quote unquote. And Black people created, they had their own senators, representatives. There were all sorts of laws passed. And then an event came called the Compromise of 1877. The presidential election was tied. The Democrats and Republicans, they couldn't really decide on who was going to be president. So what happened, the Democrats said, look, we'll let your man be president. We'll let Rutherford B. Hayes become president. But in exchange, you got to remove the troops from the South and let us handle our own affairs. And they said, okay, cool. So the Republicans and the Democrats back in the 1870s made that deal. And every right that Black people had fought so hard for at the end of Reconstruction and Civil War, those rights were gradually rolled back through the courts, ending with the Plessy versus Ferguson Act that said that created separate but equal in the United States. So over time, they fought and they kind of pushed back against those separate but equal laws, going through the court, Brown versus Board of Education, all these landmark Supreme Court cases, Voting Rights Act, Housing Rights Act. But then you got the white backlash. White people mad about this stuff. And over time, they started to gradually chip away at the rights that Black people have won. So we're back in the same place. What this does, this elimination of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and this is very clever. I wouldn't say clever. I think it's evil. But basically, you have to prove that a district was gerrymandered intentionally to discriminate against another race. You can gerrymander by political party, for example. And when gerrymander basically means you draw lines in a district to benefit one party over another, right? You can kind of cut the districts up, and that way one group can have, more representation than the other. And it's done as a way to dilute the votes for people in that area. And that happened in Louisiana. In the original case, what happened was that there was a second district added because in Louisiana, Black people make up a third of the state, but yet they did not have the representation equal to their numbers. So they created another district. That's when they sued. And that's when they brought us to the Supreme Court, which is what their intention was, right? And it's very funny because what this means, even though Black people can vote, because they've diluted our numbers, we won't be able to use our numbers and our votes to really affect change, which is the intention. And it's done as a way to benefit the party in power, which is currently the Republican Party. These laws can be changed and they can be amended and whatnot, but the purpose of the Voting Rights Act of 65 was to prevent these type of things to happen. To before, it didn't matter of your intent. What mattered was the impact. But now, you literally got to catch a white person on camera saying, yeah, we doing this so the niggas can't vote, right? That's not going to happen. So they basically just gutted the move. And then now, with the midterms, and this is very important, the midterms are coming up. Trump is concerned, the Republicans are concerned about a wave of Democrats in office that could potentially impeach him. You need 2/3 vote in the Senate to convict for impeachment. That's 67 senators. If you can get 67 senators willing to impeach the president, he's out of there. And he knows that. So he's doing everything possible to rig the midterms. And this is just another tool in the tool belt. And it's very, to me, it just shows that, again, racism is permanent. And any step we make towards improving our lives, the white majority will do everything possible to claw that back. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Black Steel. In the chat, Trigger Happy says, if laws are this fickle and susceptible, ooh, Trigger Happy, remember I said about these big words, huh? But it's okay. I went to the library a lot as a child. If laws are this fickle and susceptible to change, why should third world countries have to submit to quote unquote democracy when this happens? That's a great question. That's a great question, Trigger Happy. I'm going to say that personally. Great question. But Buana, what say you from what you've seen with the Supreme Court limiting Voting Rights Act? Are Black people fighting the same fights our ancestors were?
Well, to answer Trigger Happy's question is because they have the biggest stick. That's the reason why they have to submit. They have the biggest stick. But maybe Black Steel can help me with this as I try to suss this thing out. So there are two terms that you hear in this discussion. There's desperate impact and there's intent. So desperate impact was a legal theory that a lot of the civil rights lawyers used back in the day, because they said that, yes, the policies on its face, the laws on its face appear to have neutrality, appear to be neutral. Basically one size fits all. But the impact of the law itself is disproportionately affecting Black people, right? So if the impact was affecting Black people, the conclusion was obviously you should get rid of these laws because it has the impact where it's just affected a certain group of people. So the Supreme Court the Supreme Court in their majority said, well, yes, it may be impacting specific people, but the law itself is neutral. So you have to show, because it's impacting your group of people, that we had malice intent in doing that. We had bad intent in creating the law itself. So now you have to show our racism. You have to show we were racist in creating the law intentionally because we wanted specifically to disproportionately impact your group of people. Is that right, Black Steel? Did I explain that right?
Be a law professor.
No, I'm saying, did I explain that right? Because I want to be clear.
You nailed it. Exactly.
Okay, so now the question becomes, how do you show intent if not by impact? Because I mean, no, okay. Because if it looks like a duck, and if it walks like a duck, and if it talks like a duck, why are we not calling it a duck? And so it has to go further. You have to now show somebody on tape saying, my intention is to do that. Or I don't know, because if the act itself or if the impact itself is showing you, for years and years and decades, this is the end result. You can't say, well, maybe you just got the law wrong, but our intention was neutrality. So you have to show me being racist. How do you? But see, understanding the state of affairs of not only America, the world right now, and how random people are. You just had a police officer saying how she hates black people, this and stuff. There's going to be some person, but I doubt that. You can't rely on that kind of thing and a hope and a prayer. But there's going to be some idiot person getting online to say, yeah, we want to do this N-words, and this is why we did this. You can have some person do that, really, and they can get them on tape. Now you'll have this thing called standing. But needless to say, I just personally think that it is a farce. And you can't rectify the law. Sometimes it is a delusion. We were discussing the law last week, and how we get into these diluted arguments of law. But the reality is these people don't really care. They don't care about the law and nothing like that. They gangsters, they bullies, and they're going to do whatever they need to do. My solution for the Democratic Party or people who incline like that is to pack the Supreme Court. I would try to create numbers what is favorable to me. And I'm thinking that the American Congress has the ability to do that. So if the Dems get into office, they pack the courts and get more Supreme Court justices. So now you'll have the dilution of the Supreme Court where it's skewed towards the Democratic Party. You'll have I would try to get the most left-leaning judges possible on the Supreme Court, to try to stifle off all those right-wingers on the Supreme Court who's creating these ridiculous laws, But I think that Trump is trying to do everything he can because he knows that during the elections in November that he will be rendered a toothless tiger. He'll be rendered a toothless tiger. So you try to get all these things done right now because in the other years of him being in office, he will just be a paper tiger in terms of power. But it is. Let me answer the question. As far as the black people fighting the same fights our ancestors, yes, because me and Trigger Happy had an argument before in terms of the same thing in regards to time. And Trigger Happy's argument was that in the African idea or ideology, time is circular, not necessarily linear. And you know what? Trigger Happy was right. I guess all these people are right once again. Trigger Happy was right because we are going right back to where we was before and fighting the same kinds of battles. But I say the trick is to correct the thing and correct the thing right. So you don't have to repeat the same things over and over and over again. But as Trigger Happy was trying to convince me back in the day, time in African consciousness, it is circular. It is circular. And I guess that's why we back to fighting the same fights our ancestors. But for me, the corrective measure is to correct the thing so we don't have to repeat the same thing over and over and over and over again. But that's my idea and beliefs on this particular point.
I appreciate it, Buana. In the chat, QW Don says the courts are stacked right, again, politically right in the United States for the next 40 years. It's a wrap. What say you two? Buana, Black Steel.
No, you could still expand the courts. It's nothing in the Constitution that says it has to only be 9. So you could get an expanded court. You could get an expanded court, and Congress has the power to do that. So you could do that. So it's and get a sign off from the president himself. So that could happen. That could happen. But I'll leave it.
What say you, Black Steel? Are the courts are stacked for the next 40 years according to QW Don? And it's a wrap. Is it a wrap for the United States?
I gotta say, it's looking bad. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna say, You know, y'all know I'm all about revolutionary optimism. But unless people are willing to be drastic, so California is already in the midst of changing and gerrymandering its districts in favor of Democrats, right? In Florida, they've gerrymandered the district so badly that Democrats only get 4 seats in the House. Florida is the third most populated state in the country, and they drew the line so that it basically nullifies all the major Democratic cities in the state: Tampa, Miami-Dade, St. Pete, Jacksonville. These are all majority Democratic spaces. Also, a lot of population. They just drew the line so where they just basically diluted all that. Texas is probably going to do the same thing, if not already. Louisiana actually stopped their election to now they've made this Supreme Court decision. The problem I think when he's had these bipartisan issues is that one party tries to play by the rules and the other party just does whatever they want to do. And I think it kind of hamstrings them. Without these, again, the courts and these judges serve for life, right? These judges are served for a long time. And this was always the plan. Going all the way back to Richard Nixon, this is always the plan. This was what the so-called Southern strategy was about, to roll back the gains of the civil rights era. This is why you see the parties flip. This is why you see the majority of the Southern states going from supporting majority Democrats to majority Republicans, because they wanted to erase those gains. So this has been something that has long been in the making. Abortion, Voting Rights Act, gay marriage is next on the chopping block, regardless how you feel about it. Interracial marriage, probably too. Who knows? I know some brothers on the panel may support those two, but I feel like this is a long game. But yeah. But anyways, this is definitely it's we got to fight back. Like Juana said, stack the court. There's nothing that says it got to be nine justices. Why is everything 6-3? I put 20 justices on that motherfucker if I was the next Democratic president. 20 justices on there. You know, run it all back. Bring as many cases as you want. I got 25 people on the court. What you gonna do? But that's kind of why they're doing this, because they know how unpopular their policies are. Gas went up a whole $1 last week. I put $70 in my tank. I'm hurting right now, okay? So a lot of people are angry and frustrated at this current administration. And the Republicans know that. And they're trying to prevent being taken out of power, regardless of how unpopular their policies are. This war is unpopular. The tariffs are unpopular. The cost of everything has increased all this time. And we're not just imagining it. So they're trying to prevent the fair democratic exchange of power. But we got if they're gonna fight, they got to fight back as much vitriol and as hatred as the other side does. You know, they want to try to play by the rules and maintain the semblance of order and democracy and all the other stuff. And the other side, like, nah, fuck you guys. We're gonna do what we want. And I think we got to get in the mud and get dirty like everybody else, if that's how you want to roll.
The crazy thing is, go ahead, Bloxy. Sorry.
Go ahead, man. Good.
But the crazy thing is, what you were saying is true, brother. What you are saying is true. These people they'll bite off their nose to spite their face. I'm saying that even as a Republican person, just the things you described just now. Yeah, gas prices are higher, not only for Democrats. Gas prices are higher for you too. You know, it's like, you know, the cost of living has gone up dramatically. You're gonna send your sons and daughters to go fight and be bullet bags or bullet cushions in Iran now, and you promised them no more forever wars. The man he said, I know the world doesn't like pedophiles. He said that we're gonna open the Jeffrey Epstein files, and he is yet to do that. And if he has, he is redacted so much of that information that you can't even read anything in that. I mean, he's lied to the Republican Party as well. So it's like, why would I used to think that reasonable people would not support that, because any reasonable person would still say, man, this man is not for us. He is for the wealthy. He is for the rich class of people. He is not for the poor. And the poor represents the majority. So even if you were some bubba in the backwoods of Alabama, the fact that a white supremacist is in office, is that enough for you? And many of these people will say, yes, I would rather starve and die. And starve and die as long as who I see represented in the Oval Office look just like me, even though I get nothing from him being out of office. I mean, it's an amazing thing. But like I come to this ultimate conclusion that I guess people are not reasonable. You find a few and far between people who could sit down and think critically and analyze and assess the situation and say, I should vote for my interests. But these people are not going to do it, no matter what. That I don't know. I'll leave it, brothers.
Appreciate it, Juan. Appreciate it, Black Steel. In the chat, Goku911 says, yes, the redaction. Now he's bringing info on the UFOs to distract. Man, if this administration knows one thing, it really knows on how to try to get you to focus on things that don't matter. That quote-unquote shooting at that White House dinner, if I have to have a personal statement on it, I've never seen something more ridiculous in my life, but I digress. Speaking of ridiculous,
what's more ridiculous, Jacadero? He is convinced. Everyone saw Trump took a picture, right? Took a picture of him pretending to be Jesus. And he is convinced his base that he was a doctor, and you hear people repeating this nonsense, and I'm saying you can't trust your lying eyes. I mean,
as somebody who is not a Christian, never will be a Christian, and not religious in the Abrahamic context, when I saw that, do you know what I told him? Do you know what I said to the U.S. president?
What's that?
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. Shit, I'm saying.
Get out of here, man. Get out of here. Very, very. This administration. It's when they make documentaries about this administration. I fully believe that there are going to be more than half of viewers that are going to not be able to tell the difference between the documentary and a comedy film, because this is been laughable. You got, is it Cash App? Yeah, Cash App Patel drinking, having the time of his life during the Winter Olympics. Is it Kristi Noem and her husband wearing fake? What was he dressing up like a woman? This is insanity. Trigger Happy has a laugh just like me. Yeah,
you still have black people during this time saying, man, we gonna vote the couch. We voting the couch. I'm like, really?
What's interesting? You know what? I'll leave the comments when I become a panelist again. We're gonna go to Shoot the Breeze number 5. And guys, if you are just tuning in, I am Jacadero filling in for Brother Koku here on the Better Medicine Podcast. Shoot the Breeze episode 239. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And also we have a Discord. So not only on Saturday nights do we connect 7 days a week. That's right. 25/8, 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. That's right. We don't stop. Connect with us on the Discord. That's the Better Medicine Podcast on the Discord. Connect, build, let's go. I have more than 5 topics. That's right. I was ready. I was like, just in case we didn't get so much of a conversation,